Childhood is tragic and depressing and sad, and you got to find out all this shit you didn't want to know about the world. I mean, it starts with Santa Claus is actually your parents, and it just goes downhill from there. So if you don't want to deal with all that crap, don't have kids. Simple, easy peasy. I'm Devin Harrington, the average Gen Xer. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by to hang out with me. You know I would love it if you would do all those YouTubey things, subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. I sure appreciate it. Okay, so on this channel, there's a couple different things I talk about, and we are right now in the middle of our look at Corinne Maier's book, No Kids, 40 Good Reasons Not to Have Children. Corinne Maier is a French psychoanalyst. She wrote this book in about 2007. It was published in France first, and then it was published in the States in 2009. And people got their thong all in a twist about it, as you can imagine. So we're taking a look at 10 reasons at a time, and this is part 3. So we are on reasons number 21 to 30 not to have children. So let's just get right into it. Reason number 21, parent above all, no thank you. And this is from this chapter. Corinne says, even if she runs a company, sells millions of records, or has a thrilling job, a woman is supposed to say, the kids come first. Increasingly, men are also expected to be parentally correct. And those are her words, parentally correct. And that is, I mean, she wrote this so long ago, but that is even more true today. France has never had a childless president of the Republic. And in other countries, there are not that many either. A child-free leader like German Chancellor Angela Merkel is a remarkable exception. And I have to say, I did not even know that Angela Merkel didn't have children. So I have to look a little bit further into that. I'm planning to do a video on famous child-free people, and possibly Angela Merkel will make the list. Anyway, Corinne goes on. Having children is clearly a real electoral advantage, which candidates are all too eager to exploit, splashing their family photos all over the media. President Kennedy, of the US, of course, set the tone in the 1960s. I often think of that image of him at his table in the White House while his son is playing under the desk. Kids sell. It's that simple. Corinne goes on. They're walking billboards that declare, you can trust my mom or dad, vote for them in full confidence because they have kids. They'll understand your problems. Corinne continues, what does wanting a child really mean? Do we know what we want when we want a child? I would say, and this is me now, most people don't even know. They just assume that they're supposed to want this, and so, or they are it's burned into their brain from birth that they come from a family where this is what you do, you get married, you have kids, it's just what you do. They don't think about it. It's just the most natural thing in the world. So why would you have to think about it? Corinne continues, do we know what we want when we want a child? Are we seeking its well-being, meaning the child? Psychoanalysis teaches that nothing is more dangerous than wanting good things for someone else, since you're simply projecting your own needs onto the other. And one day you are going to make the other pay for that famous good that you were trying to impose. Wishing someone else good fortune at any cost is ultimately destructive, because no parent is ever wise enough to know what she really wants for the children. To Marie Bonaparte, who asked him for advice on raising her children, Sigmund Freud wisely replied, Do whatever you like. Whatever it is will be bad. Oh man. I mean, at least Freud was honest, right? Because that is kind of a trope that no matter what you do to raise your kids, they're going to grow up and they're going to have problems with the way you raised them. I mean, my mother scrimped and saved, along with my stepfather, to put me through Catholic school. I wanted no part of it, and I didn't find out until decades later that the main reason that I was put into Catholic school was because my mother got kicked out of Catholic school when she was in high school. And it was the shame of her life because of the way her parents reacted to it. And so she wanted me basically to graduate from Catholic school for her so she could graduate vicariously through me. I knew none of this growing up. I was just told, aren't you lucky you get to get a Catholic school education? Perhaps there is some truth to that, but that's an example of a parent wishing the good they want for themselves on their kids and forcing it on their kids. And I can I mean, Catholic school was okay, but I had all that religion shoved in my face for nothing. It did absolutely nothing to stop me from having unwanted pregnancies, doing drugs, stealing, doing all kind, breaking pretty much all of the commandments except for murder. So I agree with her, with Corinne in this chapter, that most people don't even think about what what it means to have a child, and that now in our society nowadays, you are just expected to be mom or dad, regardless of what you achieve in your own life. You are mom or dad, and for many of us, that's just no kind of a life. Moving on to number 22, keep the experts at bay. And this is number 22 of 40 good reasons not to have children. So if you don't have children, you won't have to deal with all the experts. She says, to bring up your child, you are going to need experts. Social workers, pediatricians, speech therapists, psychologists, a veritable army of family medical professionals. How did our grandparents ever manage without them? The modern family is under the surveillance of a therapeutic state that keeps it under constant control. These people are there to irritate you, which is true of everyone who claims to be helping you, and also to let you know that society is expecting something of you parents, and expecting a lot. So much, in fact, that you will have to go back to school in order to learn your job. And that's no joke. Ségolène Royal has proposed it very seriously. When incivilities are on the rise, we will need a system of putting parents through mandatory courses in child rearing. Ségolène Royal, and I'm probably saying her name wrong, but whatever, was a French politician in the Socialist Party. And, I gotta say, I don't disagree with her. You need a license to drive a car. You need to take a course on how to drive a car. You need to take lessons. You need to have an expert uh, go with you to watch you drive to make sure you know what you're doing before they give you the license. You need a license to catch a goddamn fish. You need a license to be a licensed massage therapist, as I am in the state of Texas. I just spent a pile of money renewing my license. You need a license to do just about any fucking thing in life. And yet, any moron that can have sex and is fertile can be a parent, the most important job in the world. So I have to say, if the United States, I mean, you can't force people, but if it was more common for people to take parenting classes, if that was just the norm and the standard, that people could learn to be good parents, and there was some kind of free class you could take, the way we all took driver's ed in high school, I really don't think I would be opposed to people learning to be better parents. It seems like in our society, you get to have all the kids you want, and it's only when the damage is done and you end up in the court system that then you get sent to some kind of parenting classes. I don't even know what's available in the States, but the point is, if you're going to have kids, you should at least read some books about it. You should at least talk to other people that have kids. You should at least do your due diligence researching what it's going to be like. But unfortunately, that's not how nature works. You can just get your rocks off and then suddenly you're a parent. Congratulations. Moving on. Reason number 23 of the 40 good reasons not to have children: the family. A horror! And Corinne says, kindness, affection, spontaneity. These are the sheltering roles of the family, a comforting refuge from a public environment that is increasingly dominated by the impersonal mechanisms of the marketplace. Family life, idealized, magnified, a refuge of authenticity where people are allowed to be themselves. Well, tear up the postcard. The contemporary family is, in fact, an inward looking prison, based entirely on the child. The family means scoldings under the Christmas tree, painful and unasked for moments of truth with your mother in law, resentment that has been simmering for generations, shameful family secrets that nobody dares name, but that are a burden to all. And I mean, everybody's family has drama. Everybody's family has skeletons in the closet. That's just human life. We're all flawed. But the media, society, social media, I don't know what you want to call it, but the world at large loves to put forth this made up Disneyland Hallmark image of what it's like to have a family, meaning you found someone you liked, you had a bunch of kids with them, and that's your family. I hope, it is my sincere hope, that the growing movement of child free people, as us Gen Xers get older, because now with the Gen X population aging, everybody loves to say, who's going to take care of you when you're old? That really pisses me off. That's probably the most dumb fuck reason to have children. Who's going to take care of you when you're old? Here's a real quick story time. Okay, so this is my grandma, my mom's mother. She died when she was 90 a few years ago. She is of the world was of the World War II generation. She got married at 19 to my grandfather. He was right out of the Coast Guard of World War II, and they did what they were supposed to do. They were good Catholics. They had 6 kids. They had God knows how many grandchildren. I was the first of many. And you would think that my grandma, considering all her life, all she ever said to any of us when it came to be like people asking her, oh, how old do you think you'll live to be, Phyllis? Or, what are you going to do when you get older and you retire? Because my grandma is real New England, and her catchphrase was, I got 9 million things to do. And she was just always go, go, go. She always told us, I remember this clearly from as long as I can remember. She always said, do not put me in a nursing home. Whatever happens, I want to die in my own house. I want to stay in my own house. I'm going to live to be 100, and I want to die in my own house. I mean, she was adamant about them. I remember one time she said to me, uh, nobody ever better put me in a nursing home. And if anyone ever tries to feed me, I will bite them. So that was the kind of little spitfire that she was. So when she was about 87, 8-ish, she was getting up there in her 80s. She was still living in her house, and she lived with my uncle, who, that's a long story in itself, but she had given him power of attorney. He was basically the one of her six kids who, stayed in the house, briefly married when he was young, and then moved back home when he got divorced, and he just never left. He lived in the house. And so it was just an understood, unwritten family rule that my uncle was going to be my grandma's caretaker when she got old. And she took care of my uncle his whole life. I mean, home cooked meal on the table 3 times a day, did his laundry, and he was, well into his 60s by the time she was getting up there in age. Well, as fate would have it, my grandma got Parkinson's with dementia. And what do you think my uncle did? He put her in a nursing home against the screaming and hollering protests of my mom, her sister, me, everybody involved, basically. My mom and her sister even worked it out so that Medicare would supply 24-hour nursing care paid for by Medicare, which was what my grandma would have wanted. By this time, grandma's got dementia. She's in a nursing home. She cannot speak for herself anymore. And something you should know, once you get into a nursing home, those people, I mean, I'm not nothing against people who work in nursing homes, because I did meet some really nice people there when I visited my grandma, but they basically keep you drugged up so that you'll move it along faster. Anyway, my grandma had 6 kids, untold numbers of grandchildren and great grandchildren. And not a one of us could do anything about my uncle putting her in a nursing home so that he could sit at home and drink in peace. Because, every family has skeletons in the closet. And my uncle was falling down drunk by like 3 in the afternoon every day. And having nurses come into the house was going to interrupt all of that. They would have reported him to elder services, lickety split. So he had her put in a nursing home. And that was that. And there was nothing we could do about it because she had given him medical power of attorney. So the next person that asks me who's going to take care of me when I get old because I don't have kids, I'm going to say the same nursing home people that are going to take care of you when you get old. I digress, as I usually do. Let's get back to Corinne. And reason number 23, the family is a horror. Every family is an inescapable nest of vipers. And Miss Corinne took some mighty piles of shit for that statement. I've seen that as a pull quote from a couple of different reviews of this book. People did not like that, but tell me it's not true. I mean, God bless you if you come from a Hallmark family where everybody gets along and everybody likes each other and everybody, is close. Good for you. You are the folks that need to be reproducing. But the people I come from, alcoholics, depressed, unable to communicate with each other, emotionally stunted. We don't need to reproduce. I knew that coming out of the gate. Anyway. Child-parent relationships are not a piece of cake. Yeah, we knew that. It's not just love, it's also hatred, resentment, jealousy, all those feelings we don't talk about because it's just not done. And she goes on to discuss some of the writings of a 20th century psychoanalyst named D.W. Winnicott. And he wrote 17 reasons why a mother might detest her baby. The baby is a danger to the mother's body. He disrupts her private life. He hurts her breasts. He treats her like an idiot. He makes her follow his rules. He frustrates her. Not exactly a rosy picture of maternity. If you have kids, you're going to have to deal with all of these contradictions. Corinne goes on. The Murdouf, and Murdouf, as we explained in the last video about this, in part 2, is a French word that basically means soccer mom. It's kind of like the modern working mother, and her whole identity is in being mommy. The Merdoof flings around an oversimplified psycho jargon like a kind of familial Esperanto. He is going through his Oedipus as if she were saying his teeth are coming in, meaning that he is in love with his mother. And of course, she is delighted to have a little admirer in her pocket. And that just really makes me think of this whole boy mom craze that's going on. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. I've only had like the most peripheral glance at it. Kiki Chanel is one of my absolute favorite YouTubers, and she did a really good video on the whole boy mom trend and how it's just getting over the top and crazy. I'll see if I can link that video below, because there are moms out there that their whole identity is being a boy mom. And they really do, like Corinne says, are delighted to have a little admirer in their pocket. Reason number 24 of the 40 good reasons not to have children. Don't revert to childhood. The child is the high priest of taste. The young look, and young look is capitalized, is all the rage. A lot of mothers try to dress like their adolescent daughters. A short little sweater, navel showing. Kids' taste is becoming almost everybody's style. It used to be that young girls imitated their mothers and dressed up like ladies. Now women copy their daughters and dress like waifs. Exit the sexy and mysterious dame incarnated by movie stars in the old days. It makes you wonder why the big designers go to such lengths to dress real women when women don't even want to be women anymore. And that is certainly true. We are in a time in history when staying young and looking young are pretty much above all. Um, and being a mom is advantageous, is something you should go for, but looking like a mom is not. Dressing like a mom is not. Even having a body of a mom is not. You can get your hoo-ha rejuvenated. You can get everything pulled and tucked and tweaked and sucked out and snatched and sucked in and whatever you want, as long as you don't look matronly. Corinne goes on. Adults adore products intended for children and have taken over quite a few of their own purposes. Kids' furniture, toy cars, miniature everything. To live a miniature life in a little kid's room. What's the advantage? When you treat yourself like a child, you don't have to look after your own kids. So what I think she's saying here is that a lot of people feel like having their own children is a way of making up in some way for their own childhood. Even my own mom said one of the reasons she wanted to have kids was so that she could do better than her parents did, so that she could show her kids love and affection that her parents didn't show her. So, she could make up for her parents' mistakes. And it seems like a lot of people do have children so that they can relive their own childhood through the eyes of their kids. And I mean, that just sounds like a fucking nightmare. Childhood is tragic and depressing and sad, and you got to find out all this shit you didn't want to know about the world. I mean, it starts with Santa Claus is actually your parents, and it just goes downhill from there. So if you don't want to deal with all that crap, don't have kids. Simple, easy peasy. Getting back to Corinne. Getting in on the action, bookstores now have entire walls of young adult literature, YA, as they call it these days. And you can bet on there being more and more of it. Why bother reading books that are difficult? Young adult literature is a great example of an oxymoron. And into that, we can certainly throw the Twilight series, which, I realize that's already like 10 years old at least, maybe more. But It was written for teenagers, and gazillions of adults read those books. And I slogged my way through them because one of my massage clients had lent the actual hardcover first editions to me. And oh my God, that is exactly the feeling that I got of reading this. Well, she says, the success of the young adult market has spawned imitators. There's a growing tide of literature for adults that resembles literature for children. Literature for children meant for adults. This kind of dumbed down stuff has nevertheless a very useful social function. It gives adults who do not read the illusion of having nonetheless scrounged a few crumbs of so called culture. Youth culture is, I mean, we have Kids' Choice Awards here. We have, TV stations just for kids. We have everything you can imagine just for kids in the States and probably the world over too. But youth culture is young and lacks experience and lacks culture. And having children just so you can stay in your own childhood is just icky. It's so icky that I have to move on to the next reason. Number 25 of the 40 good reasons not to have children. It takes real courage to keep saying me first. The evolution of the last few centuries is often seen as the triumph of personal liberty over social constraints, among them, the family. Certainly true. We have finally gotten to a place in society, and I like to say that Gen X women were the first group of women coming up in the 80s and 90s who were not absolutely expected to get married and have babies. It was like all of the past, all of the ancestors before us worked and fought and struggled for the freedoms that Gen X women grew up enjoying. Unfortunately, there's now, at least in the States, probably in other parts of the world as well, a backlash to that. That's why we see so many people getting so upset over people making child-free content like this. Like, we're going to be responsible for the extinction of the human race. I really loved this part of this chapter, which is why I highlighted it in a different color. But Corinne Maier says, we live in a society of ants, where working and reproducing represent the ultimate objective of the human experience. Work is the opiate of the people. Will children be their consolation? A society where life consists of earning a living and raising your kids is a society with no future, since it has no dreams. Having a child is the best possible way to avoid asking what the meaning of life is, as everything revolves around that child, who is a marvelous substitute for the existential quest. I love that she says that because, and I will probably get some flack for this, but I swear to God, my whole life, I thought I was maybe I am a fucking asshole anyway, but I thought I was a horrible person because anytime anyone of any age would say to me, I'm pregnant, my gut reaction would be disappointment. Like, really? That's the best you could think of to do with your life? Like, you get one life, especially if they're really young. I mean, if you're pushing 40 and you really want a baby, good for you, I guess. But you had sex and you got pregnant and you're 22, and that's the best you could think of to do with your 22-year-old life is to bring another consumer into the world and have that be the center of your existence? Really? That's it? That's all you could think of? I mean, come on, use your imagination for God's sake. Corinne goes on. To respond to the question of the meaning of life by simply reproducing yourself is to shift the question to the next generation, to not respond at all, or to not even try. Isn't that the worst kind of cowardice? I love that. I love it. I don't care what anyone says. I've gotten, lots of religious people in my comments telling me I'm going to burn in hell because I'm not using my uterus, which is too old to reproduce now. But in my fertile times, I did not use my uterus as their God would have me use it. And that because of that, I'm going to burn in hell. But to that, I say, I spent my life trying to figure out the meaning of life and what makes me like I'm the only one of me that there is, as is every other individual on the planet. And shouldn't we all, at least if we're going to be here for the nanosecond that our life takes, shouldn't we at least think about it? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? What do I want? What do I want? And as I've said many times on this channel, I'm the oldest of four and I'm the only girl. So I was parentified into child slavery. And that's a whole other video, but that's one of the main reasons why I couldn't wait to get out of the house so I could stop raising kids or helping raise kids, so I could stop cleaning up after kids and taking care of kids. And by the time I left the house at 19, I felt like I was starting my childhood. And so, maybe I should count myself lucky that I'm one of those people that there was never any question. I did not want children. And as I've said before, the reason I make this content is not for all the people who are born knowing that they definitely want to be parents and they so want to be good parents. Good for you. You are the people that should be having kids. All the people like me on the other end of the spectrum that absolutely know they have better shit to do than reproduce and raise children, I don't make this content for them. They're already on my team. It's all the people in the middle who are kind of wishy-washy about it and on the fence and maybe I'll have a couple kids in the future. I think that's why so many child-free content creators make their content. So that, on the off chance that you could influence someone and help them spend more of their life thinking about themselves and working on themselves and educating themselves and learning about themselves and instead of just going the traditional route and reproducing. And then that's your life. Because that is your life, unless you're a shitty parent. And there are no two ways about it. Ugh. Gross, gross, gross. Okay, moving on. Reason number 26 of the 40 good reasons not to have kids, from the book No Kids by Corinne Maier. Kids signal the end of your youthful dreams. For tens of centuries, powerful pressure has been put on couples to stay united for the sake of the children. It was considered appropriate that both members of the couple renounce their personal ambitions in order to stay together and bring up their kids. People who have no children are sometimes astonished by the amount of sacrifice made for kids. Kids who never asked for anything, never asked to be born, never asked to be here. And the answer they get is, oh, you could never understand. You don't have kids. Well, I don't have kids, okay? But I have 2 dogs and I have a horse. And I'm not trying to say that that's the equivalent of 1.5 children or whatever, but people have responsibility without having children. And that doesn't mean that they don't understand how much you love your kids and that you're going to go work 3 jobs and kill yourself so that you can put your kid through college or so that you can just keep a roof over your kid's head. I mean, let's be real in this economy. But I don't have to have children to know what responsibility is. I have two dogs. They have vet bills. They need to be fed every day. They need to be exercised every day. They need to be loved every day. They need attention. There is a certain amount of responsibility. It doesn't matter if I'm sick, I still have to get them out. And then you want to talk about responsibility. Try having a horse. People think that having a horse is like a fun little hobby, and it's not. You absolutely have to have it in your blood and love it more than life itself to justify the expense of having one horse. And that is a lot like having kids. You have to love them more than anything in the world to justify the sacrifices you will make for them. So it really pisses me off when parents are like, "Oh, you don't understand. You don't have kids." Yeah, I'm a grown ass adult, okay? I understand responsibility. I understand having to get stuff done. I understand having to pay bills, okay? You don't have to breed to understand responsibility. Okay. So Corinne goes on, the child is not the adult's future. That's another lie society created to keep us quiet. And it goes like this: your children will succeed where you failed. We will give them the means through education and social advancement. It's guaranteed in the contract. Paradise is for tomorrow, not today. Happiness is for your kids, not for you. While you wait for the great tomorrow that is winging toward your progeny, just keep quiet. One, my child may have this one day, is worth far more than any, I want this here and now, isn't it? And then she says, well, that's debatable. And that that is another reason why I am a child free person, because of this absolute drudgery and struggle I watched my mother go through, all because she had kids. All of that sacrifice for what? For what? Who are you trying to impress by being a martyr to your own children? You know, you give up so much of yourself just to have kids, just to give your kids the basics of a decent life. And then what is it for? What do you get out of that? And just saying that, what do you get out of that? I automatically have like a little tiny bit of leftover like guilt from the way society views parenthood, you know, like you're not supposed to get anything out of it. Having children is its own reward. Well, to that I say bullshit. And so does Corinne, because she says, in reality, children are often used as an excuse for giving up on life without even trying. The moral of the story is, when you do not do what you really want to do, there is no excuse. Not work, not the family, not your country. And that, I mean, I don't even know that I should add to that, because I so feel that. And that was reason number 587 and a half why I didn't want to have kids, because I could see in my upbringing how much work it is, how there is nothing else when you have kids. Unless you're massively rich and you can hire endless help. But even then, you you never escape um, caring for your kids and worrying about them. And that leads into the next reason number 27. You can't stop yourself from wanting your kids to be happy. The happiness we want for children, that we promise them, is an odd thing. First of all, none of us knows what happiness is. And she goes on to say things like, is it social success? Is it being able to just drink and sleep around and do whatever the hell you want? Is it material well-being? Is it money? Is it you know, having a great sex life. What is happiness? And she explains that happiness as a human right didn't really appear until like the late 1700s during the American and French revolutions. And that's interesting because as an American, we all know that written into the US Constitution is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So no surprise why Americans are constant hedonists and constantly seeking out happiness, almost as an obsession. It is a way of life, being happy. And yet, is that true? Because I don't think anybody's life's meant to be happy all the time. I mean, that's ridiculous. Your brain would explode. If you were happy all the time, you wouldn't know what when something was wrong. You wouldn't know what sadness was. If you didn't have sadness and grief and missing people and all of that, then happiness wouldn't be so great. And yet, we're all chasing happiness. Corinne goes on, the growth of the importance of the word happiness is the result of centuries of progress because we've always believed that tomorrow will be better than today. But promising a child happiness today, and by today, meaning when you choose to have that child, when they are an innocent baby, and, it is kind of human nature to see every newborn baby as the absolute hope of the world because in that moment they could be anyone. That baby could grow up and cure every horrible disease. They could solve the problems of the world. We all know in the back of our minds that that is highly unlikely, and yet every newborn baby is the hope of the world. And now we are living in a time when we have it, especially in America. I mean, could we have it any easier? We have a thing that we carry around in our pockets that tells us where to go and what to do with ourselves and answers any question you can think of. You can find an answer in your cell phone. Everything is automated. You don't have to ever leave your house. I mean, we have it so easy. We have leisure time nowadays in ways that our grandparents even couldn't even dream of. And yet, promising your baby a happy life is futile. Anyway, Corinne goes on. Parents struggle like mad for the happiness of their children. Happy, she says. In fact, parents don't promise their kids happiness, they demand it of them. Be happy is a fierce and obscene injunction coming from the superego that Freud wrote about, that gives orders and at the same time tells you to play. If someone is trying to persuade you that all they want is your well being, watch out, because the same person will inevitably feel justified in preaching at you, giving you advice, trying to make you do things you don't want to do. And besides, that kind of training is a mission eternally doomed to failure, because wanting the welfare or happiness of someone else is a sure path to devastation. Happiness? No thanks. No way. Not for me. And so I think what she's saying is the whole concept of having kids because children are so happy and there's nothing like the sound of children's laughter. And that's what people think of when they think of their future kids. And that's not life. Reason number 28. You can't get away from your kids. So what do you do with children? Everybody adores them, but nobody really wants them around. Spend years in the house looking after kids? You must know that this is death by boredom. Yeah, I would say. Looking after children soon proves to be more tiring than going to your job. The smart thing to do, if you can, is find your way back to the job you left behind. And nowadays, as we know, that is what most women do out of necessity because most households need two incomes. She goes on to say, I would bet that's why so many women go back to work after they've had kids. Now, remember, she's French, and France is way more socialized than America. I think they even have childcare in France, government sponsored childcare. We don't have any of that shit in the US. We have nothing. You're on your own, basically, if you have kids in the US. And most women, I would say, in the US at least, go back for the money. But that presents a whole other problem. And she goes on to say, um, I would bet that's why so many women go back to work after they've had kids, to the point that it's the norm these days. I am focusing on women here because in our world, it is still the woman who takes on the bulk of child raising. Men, through either cleverness or laziness, always manage to get out of it. And yes, I realize this book is meant to be tongue in cheek, and Corinne Maier has two children of her own, so she's writing this book out of a if I had it to do over again kind of perspective. And I'm not saying that all men. I'm not a man hater. I am not someone that. I just think men and women are equal but different. But I have been enlightened by reading the Regretful Parents subreddit because it is astounding to me in 2024 that so many women on those subreddits will tell their story and be like, my husband doesn't even work. He sits at home and plays video games all day, and I take care of 3 kids and have a job. Oh, excuse me, what? It's 2024. Who signed up for this crap? I can't even believe it. So I realize not all men are like that. There are plenty of guys out there who pull more than their share of the weight in the family. But as a broad generalization, unfortunately, it is still true in this day and age. Corinne goes on, all right, go to work then. But the children are still going to need looking after. How do you accommodate your kids to your schedule? Live-in help costs a pile. Problems build up. You can't just stow the kids away somewhere. And she goes on and on and on about how difficult it is in France to get childcare through the government because you have to, jump through all these hoops and fill out all kinds of paperwork. And that was kind of eye-opening for me as an American. I mean, in America, I know people that it's like another mortgage payment just to keep their kids in daycare. And then they go to school and then they still have to go to daycare after school. And I remember knowing someone who was a single parent, and he was just so excited when summer was over because the cost of daycare went down because his kid was in public school most of the day. I mean, that's just not a way to live. That's not even a way to raise children, ideally, It's how much better to just not have those kids. If you need to work and so you can't take care of your kids and you don't have anyone else to take care of them, what's the point? What's the point? To a child-free person like me, there is no point, but that's just my opinion. Number 29. We're almost done today, guys. Number 29 of the 40 good reasons not to have children. Get used to it. School is boot camp. Okay, so now we're at the point where the kid is old enough to go to school, right? They don't need to be in daycare anymore. Hooray. Your children are going to spend the most important part of their young lives in school. This will help socialize them, their parents will say, meaning that it is good for them because even if they don't learn anything, they will be playing with their friends. However, school is not actually a place of open friendships and free expression. Au contraire, this is the kingdom of social control. A school is a place for discipline and indoctrination. It is designed for the average person, neither too bright nor too stupid. And those who conform to this model thrive. They learn to read in the year that they are supposed to learn to read, not the year after. They put up with stupid assignments and never ask why. School is all about norms. It serves to format people for work, for the kind of routine that requires no special technical or intellectual competence. And she goes on to say, at school, they don't want individuals. If your kid does not conform to the norm, it will be up to you to straighten him out before they expel him. And then she tells a story of her own. I was put in my place by a teacher in a playground. It was all my fault that if my child wasn't interested in the curriculum, if he fought in the schoolyard, if he left stuff at home, I was doing a bad job of parenting. It felt like being in front of an examining magistrate. There was I, mute, having to look contrite. I was terrified my kid would be expelled. I was scared that in the middle of a crisis and in the middle of a school term, I would have to find a private school that would be willing to take him. It's hard to be the parent of a student, especially an atypical student, meaning one who doesn't want to just fit in the box, of which, it seems, there are a growing number. I just don't even have a lot to say about that because I'm exhausted just reading about it. I mean, the thought of having a kid and sending them to school and having them be the one who does things wrong or gets in trouble or doesn't fit in or doesn't make friends. I mean, it's just like the worst parts of childhood that you have to relive over and over again. Don't need it. And here we are, finally. The end of today's video. Reason number 30 of the 40 good reasons not to have kids, from the book No Kids by Corinne Maier. Raise a child, but toward what? Kids start bringing work home from school at the age of 6. Work they have absolutely no interest in doing, and understandably so. Grammar exercises, dreadful poems to be memorized, all contributing another layer of forced labor to the already overloaded parent's schedule. So she's looking at this from the perspective of the parent who's got to help the kids with their homework. And and she says, a lot of times you end up doing the kids' homework yourself because it's just faster that way, which defeats the whole purpose of kids having homework. She goes on, helping with their homework for all those years was unspeakably tedious. I have to say that when I was a kid, I detested school. Explaining things bores me, and I hate to have to repeat things. And with my own kids, I had the impression that I was going through all those hateful lessons all over again. Until one day, at the end of my tether, I finally let go and said to them, kids, do it yourselves. Whatever happens, happens. Well, we had some technical difficulties, but here we are at the end. We made it through reasons 21 to 30 of the 40 good reasons not to have children from the book No Kids by Corinne Maier. If you stuck around to the end, props to you. You guys are the best. I am so thankful for everyone who stops by to hang out with me on this little bitty channel. I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you guys in the next video.